Very, very special guest. And before I introduce our special guest, Equal Voices founder, Dr. Rosemary Spears, is watching on webcam, and she couldn't be here today, so I just wanted to take a moment to say, Rosemary, lots of folks are asking about you, and we're celebrating your spirit here with us, so we're thinking of you. I hope you're hearing that, Rosemary. It is an absolute great privilege for me today to welcome and introduce Trine Skei Grande, who everybody in this room has to know. She has come all the way from Norway to give a keynote speech today. So we're very privileged. Thank you so much for being here. Among her many accomplishments, Trine has proudly represented her Oslo constituency since 2001. She's also served as deputy leader since 2000 and as a member of the party's executive committee since 1990. Your inauguration speech is absolutely known over here in Canada as well. That's how effective it was. In terms of the entire press corps was really impressed. Your parliamentary colleagues were impressed. It's because of your clarity with your 5 points that you chose to focus on. More teachers, more research, more small business, more railways, and more attention to fighting poverty. Isn't that impressive? In addition, Trine is a strong advocate for powerful change when it comes to the tax system as well. She's a member of so many, it's very impressive, so many different committees: Standing Committee on Education, Research, Church Affairs, Enlarged Foreign Affairs Committee. I mean, that's just to name a few, ladies and gentlemen, just to give you an idea of what she does for her country. We are truly honored to have you here today to speak to us. This crowd is very anxious to hear from you, so I'll stop speaking at the moment. But ladies and gentlemen, may I please present the leader of the Norwegian Liberal Party.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Norway and Canada is, maybe you don't think it like that, but we think that Canada is very similar to Norway. And we feel very close in culture, and we feel also quite close in the way we organize our state. And many people has fled Norway just to work in Canada. So we have always many Norwegians we meet when we go here. I thought I should use the opportunity to say something about the situation in Norway today, something about the milestones in female rights in Norway, and what that has contributed to the Norwegian politics. Right now, as I'm standing here, it's about 40% or 39.6% women in the parliament. We have, I should bring that applause to Norway. We have 7 parties in the parliament, and 5 out of 7 party leaders are women right now. On the local level, it's about 37.5% of women in the local democracy. And in government, we have only 20 ministers. We are a small country. But among the 20 ministers is 10 women and 10 men. So we're quite proud of that, too. In higher education, 3 out of 5 are women taking a degree at the university. But women and men in Norway still choose different subjects to study, and that's a challenge for Norwegian equal policy against equalness between men and women. One other figure that's important is that 88.5% of the kids are going to kindergarten or nursery school from 1 year old. So you have approximately 100% coverage. So everyone that are getting a kid in Norway, you are promised to have a kindergarten place from 1 year old. And if you combine that to that we have 1 year of maternity leave, then you can have the opportunity to be a career woman and also be a good mother. I come back to that. If you are analyzing Norway and the Norwegian history regarding women's rights, I think you can go about 1,000 years back and you find a reason for me to be like this today. In Norway, the family has never been a very strong structure. It's the village, the local community, that has been the strong structure. And in a structure where the local community are working together, in a structure where the family is not that strong, the problem with being not too friendly with your dad, it's sad, but it's not a huge problem. Because you can break out of the family. You can choose to live your life differently, and still the local community is supporting you, even not now everyone in your family support your choice. And that is actually a really important thing in Norwegian history, so we can see the freedom that many women have today. I had to look up some figure before I went here, and the first big fight for women was the women's right to sell property by their own and own property. In Norway we get that in 1276. So this has been a fight for about 800-900 years, but the first victory was in 1276. The big fight for women's rights started in the 18th century, and it started with getting women the right to study, the woman's right to be a teacher, and the woman's right to have official positions in government. Education was the first area we combat and came into. But we got a breakout of the Union in 1905. And then it was an election for the king. We actually have something strange in Norway. We have an elected king. It's 100 years ago since we elected him, but we have an elected king. When he was elected, he had great support among people in Norway, and 370 men voted for him. But some clever women thought that our voice should be heard, so they collected signatures. And 278,000 women was putting their signature that they were supporting the king and supporting Norway as a free nation. That really put a hard pressure on the parliament to get women the right to vote, because they showed with their signature that they could have a meaning as strong as the men. And in 1913, as the third country in the world, we have an anonymous vote in the parliament giving women the right to vote. The anonymous vote was very important. And then it began. We actually had a woman member of parliament before women get the right to vote. And that's because women that was not married get the right to vote earlier than the other women. They hadn't anyone to represent them, so they had to represent themselves. In 1915, we get a very important law that didn't occur as a women's law, but it really was. It was the children laws in Norway, giving children the right to inherit their father, even if mother and father wasn't married. And it was a big debate in Norway. It was a really hard law to get through the parliament, because they thought that the moral will be really bad in Norway is every servant girl could try to get a kid with the man in the house and then got the heritage of him. So they thought that Norway will be a moral hell because of all the things that would happen after this child law. But the important thing was that all the women that had been pregnant with men with power, had been pregnant with men with good wealth, suddenly has some power to use their kid to get the same rights as the kid born into marriage. That's very important. The other thing that's important, that you should never condemn kids for the things parents have done. It's a very important moral issue. You should never condemn kids for what their parents have done. Kids have the rights by is a reason for why the women are strong in some areas in Norway. Because in Utsira, a very small local community, local board, and it was 11 women and 1 man. Why? Because all the men was in the shipping industry, they was in the fishery, and they wasn't there to be elected. And in some areas in Norway, women have a very strong position because the man has been at sea. In 1971, it was a big women coup around in Norway. Because we have proportional elections, and you can also change the lists. Many women all over the country was just putting votes for the women and didn't vote for the men. And in many of the major cities like Oslo and Trondheim in Norway, it was a female majority, and the men was astonished. How could this happen? How could they do this against us? But it showed that many cities was very well run with many women in the local boards. In 1974, the first party leader came. It was from my party, of course. And we also get a quota rule in our party's laws. So in my party, everything should at least have 40% of one of the sexes. Should be for at least 40-60. And that's in local boards, it's on national boards, it's an electoral list, but it's also who is going to speak in a seminar or a congress. So with that attitude in the party, it really changed things, because many women get the opportunity to show themselves what they're good for, not just for running for election, not just to have a position, but also to make a speech in an important meeting. That's also an important part of how to recruit women into important position. In 1977, we started with the maternity leave. In 1979, we get the law about equal rights. In 1981, we get the first female prime minister. And she also had many women in her government. And I'm a part of that generation, growing up with a female prime minister. And it's many places, like our ambassador said last day, that kids were talking about being a prime minister, and many boys didn't think that boys could be prime ministers, but because they only had a woman. In 1987, the maternity leave rise from 18 weeks to 42 weeks. And that was very important. And we have many other contributions. In 1999, I thought I would tell a story after the discussion here. In 1999, we get the first Minister of Defense from my party that was a woman. And on our Congress was right at the same time where we had to bomb in Bosnia and Croatia, if you remember that, in 1999. And she was talking to our Congress, explaining why she had to do it. And she was crying. And I remember walking out of the Congress, and it was a big crowd of journalists outside, saying, is it possible to have a Minister of Defense crying while she's explaining why she's bombing? And I said, is it possible to have a Minister of Defense don't crying when he's bombing? Isn't that a strength? Isn't that good for a democracy, that you realize that to do that, it's a very harsh decision? In 2003, we also made a law for cooperation, business corporations, to have at least 40% of women in their boards. That was a tough decision. 2/3 of the businesses in Norway was against it. But I get a figure yesterday when I traveled overseas, and it says that from 2003 it was 16% women in corporate boards. Today it was 34%. So it's really rising. Then it's the question, has this influence to Norwegian politics, that it has been that many women? Of course it has. things is really different with so many women. I think that this really make the welfare system in Norway different. It's also make the status of the discussion of the welfare system very important. It also has also strengthened the power of children and children issues and children's rights in Norway. But maybe the most important thing is the possibility and the freedom to be a mother and a businesswoman, a mother and a politician. And I had to admit, hearing the discussion here, it's very different from Norway. The first thing that we have the nursery school or the kindergarten opportunities, and we have the maternity leave, and combine that, you have many possibilities to choose both being a mother and a career woman. The birth rate in Norway is very high. And now it's the clue. You're going to tell this to every man that don't disagree with you. If you don't believe in feminism, if you don't believe in equal right for women, you have to believe in economy. And economy shows you that it's very, very important for a nation that women works. Because it gives taxations money, and it gives wealth, and it gave growth. Someone thinks that Norway is rich because of oil. That's a big joke. It's not right. If you compare it to Sweden, they are similar to us. They have the welfare system like us. They don't have oil. So what's the similarity between Norway and Sweden? The similarity is the participation into working force women. Women are working. They are serving growth to the Norwegian society. They are paying taxes into the Norwegian welfare system, and we grow as a country because of the women. So it's not the oil that gives Norway the wealth, it's the women. So tell that to every man saying that this is just a female way of talking and it's just important for you. No, it's important for all the men because this is giving them opportunity to be a better country. And it's also because of the maternity leave and the nursery schools, you see that men have to do the same as women. Now the big battle in Norway is the men want a bigger part of the maternity leave. Today they have a small part of it and they want a bigger part of it. And the women are not doing well here. They are trying to keep this for themselves, but men want to share this half and half. And modern men in Norway today, they want to spend time with their kids. And I have to give an example. One supplant for my party with an immigrant background. He's a Muslim father of 3. And when he was represented at the parliament, it was very important for him that he picked up the kids half of the days that he was represented. Like he do in a normal day. He's a lawyer, and he always have to pick up the kids 50% of the days. And he was very anxious that he should do this also as an MP. And I think that in the Norwegian parliament, the men and the women pick up the kids approximately 50-50. And if they don't do, the media will create a lot of problem for them. If you're a male politician and you never pick up your kids at nursery school, then you will have a big problem with the media. Because then you are not a good father. And it's this attitude is important to have. Another thing that's very different, I think, is that the political culture has changed when women come into politics. And I'm not trying to be rude, but when I arrived, I was looking at the television at the question hour in your parliament. And I had to say 2 things. The first, if you expect the citizens to respect politicians for the work they do, you should also respect each other as politicians. The second thing I was thinking about, if you are 15 years old, girl looking at television, thinking about, I really want to change the world, then I go into politics. No, I don't think a 15-year-old girl would think that after listening to that debate. And it's important, and it has something to do with leadership in political position, to find the talented girl at 15. Try to reach them, try to support them, try to encourage them to take political position, try to encourage them to go to courses, try to encourage them to use all their opportunities to go into politics. And that's the other thing I see in Norwegian politics today. If some of the parties don't recruit women in political positions, the political analysts will say, then they don't have to expect women to vote for them. If they don't have women amongst them, they don't expect women to vote for them. So that, I think, every political leader in all the 7 parties, even though we are very different, thinking that they need to recruit women, to recruit female votes. And that culture is also really changed with women coming into politics. And it's been many different battles. And I think that if I go back to my grandmother or great-grandmother generation, all generations have had their battles to get their rights today. And I think it's important for me to remember what they sacrificed many years ago so I can have the opportunities that I have today. And I'm a generation of the 80s. And all we 5 party leaders that are women today in Norway are 80s generation. And what was special with the 80s generation? I think that we were really exercised, especially as women, in all the NGO, in student organizations, in other NGOs. From the beginning, from you are 10, you heard you need special support because it's important for women to be in politics. We also learned all the rules, what we should do and what we should not do to get there. But we still have big challenges also in Norway. Everything isn't perfect. Many people feel that they reached a glass roof in their career because they are women. 15% said in a survey 2 days ago that they feel the glass roof they are reaching. A woman earns 85% of what a man earns in salary. The reason for that is that women pick occupation that have lower salaries than men. And we also have many sectors. We don't have as many female rockers in rock bands and musicians as we want to. And it's also a big discussion if you have female writers, or do we have female politicians, or do we have female musicians? In the Norwegian Grammar Award last week, they have their own category of female artists. And some of them withdrew because they said, we are not female artists, we are artists. Why do you call me a female artist? Why do you call me a female politician? Why do you call me a female artist in any other position? So we are having many discussions. We are not reaching every goal, but my hope is that when the next generation will have an even easier battle than my generation, and this is a battle it's important to take, and it's important for you to remember that this battle is always going on, but it's always a course that can bring us a better future. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Ambassador Eikeland, the Norwegian ambassador, to come up and to formally thank our keynote speaker.
Dear Trine, sisters, as the Norwegian ambassador to Canada, I'm extremely proud to have such a role model here today. Thank you so much. And I just want to add the 2 key points I feel it's so important to in the Norwegian experience, and which Trine really presented in the best possible way. Of course, it's the critical question: does women really matter, female politicians? Will they change anything, or will they just be token women? Well, the experience from Norway, and this is not just my experience or media experience, but also a lot of research going on in Norway since 1981, is that female participation has changed Norwegian policy. Not only targeting women and children much more and the welfare system, but also changing foreign policy, defense policy. We have integrated gender issues in all main policy areas. And that's the important key for female participation. It's not only me becoming a politician, it's about changing the world. And that's what policy is for. The other key, I think, is: has female participation had an effect on recruitment of girls and women to policy in Norway? Yes, it has. Women like Trine are very positive regarded by young women, girls in Norway. In 1981, when Gro Harlem Brundtland became the first prime minister, she was heavily criticized, and a lot of sexist debate about how she looked and if she had sex appeal or not. That discussion would be impossible today. I was working at a part-time teacher at that time, financing my studies, and I used to have all these discussions with my students. You know, what do you want to become? And after 1981, when Gro Harlem Brundtland became kind of an icon prime minister, appointed her cabinet 40% women, the girls, they said they just didn't want only to be married. You know, they didn't want to be princess. They wanted to be prime minister. And we had the discussion in class one day, and, you know, increasingly girls said, I want to be prime minister, prime minister. That was kind of the new, interesting role for Norwegian small girls, 10 years old. And this little boy said he had planned to be prime minister too. But one of the strong girls said, well, prime minister, that's not a job for boys. Only girls can become prime ministers in Norway. And I think that just reflects how important role models are, and female role models are, for young girls and for the recruitment of future politicians. So thank you so much, Trine, for being such a fantastic role model for myself, but even more important, for the young girls growing up in Norway today. Thank you so much.